This is my first ever podcast, and it's a Ask Me Anything podcast, so it's by definition off topic. All of the questions have been received from people that are kind enough to support me on Patreon. This podcast is available on SoundCloud, and I'm going to be uploading it to YouTube as well, purely for accessibility reasons. This is really a way for me to upload audio and not have to worry about editing video. I find a fair amount of my time is spent putting video clips together. So these podcasts are a way for me to just speak my mind and not have to worry about any of that. I have planned future podcasts with game developers, which will be interviews with them. And I'd also like to branch out and bring some guests onto the show if you have an interesting topic to discuss. I don't want it to be only about gaming. I'd like to talk about other things. So if you're an up-and-coming game developer, or you have something you feel that you need to share with people, then by all means contact me. The best way is probably just on Twitter, which is at JMMREVIEW. So let's get on with the show. Welcome to the GoldenEdge podcast. I'm JMMREVIEW. Before starting the questions, there's one thing I want to address first. There was a comment on one of my videos, I'll just read it out. Not trying to single anyone out here, so I won't read the person's name. Stop begging for money, bye unsubscribed. I don't think he's the only one with this view. More people unsubscribe to me because of my Patreon video than any other video I've uploaded. Now, I'm making that sound dramatic. The number of people that unsubscribed were actually 6. It's not uncommon for people to unsubscribe to you after uploading a video. In fact, you'll almost always lose 1 or 2 people. People just decide that it's not for them, or the content you're uploading is just not relevant anymore. And I'm not trying to win anyone back by addressing this comment. As far as I'm concerned, my channel is for my friends to watch the videos I make. But nevertheless, I think it's only right that I respond to this comment. The first thing I'll say is that we live in an age where almost all media is free online. New movies can be watched online, new music is free on YouTube, journalists have free blogs, we don't even need to buy newspapers to hear the latest news anymore. So I can understand why a lot of people think, why would I pay money to watch some guy's YouTube videos when I can just watch other videos for free? Well, first off, what people possibly didn't realise is that you can still watch my videos for free as long as you wait for 1 week after they've been finished and uploaded. Patreon's only there for people who want to support me and help my channel out. I went over this in the actual video I uploaded, so I'm not going to bore myself or anyone else watching this by going over the whole thing again. But if we live in a world where content is always free, it's just going to be simply unsustainable. And I only see 3 options going ahead. Option 1 is bombarding people with advertising. Option 2 is creating a Patreon page and hoping that people who like my content will support me. And option 3 is not getting enough funding for equipment and other running costs and just not making videos anymore. We're at a bit of an awkward stage in the internet where it's difficult to pay for the content you create. I would love to be able to make the videos I make for YouTube full time, and Patreon's the only shot I have at this. On a side note here, I would say that I don't illegally download music, and the same thing with games. The only games I download are old ROMs for games I already own. I would never dream of downloading new games, and I would encourage anyone listening to buy the media you like and support the creators you like. It's the only way you're guaranteed to see more of it. So I don't feel like spending any more time on this topic. Let's move on to some questions. Where do you live and what do you do professionally? I was born and raised in Philadelphia, but one day when I was quite young, I got into a fight during a basketball game with some people outside my school. At the time, my mother thought it was best if I moved with my aunt and uncle who lived in Bel Air. So I grew up there with my cousins Ashley, Hillary and Carlton. Okay, but now you've probably realised that I'm just describing the intro to The Fresh Prince of Bel Air. That was a pretty poor attempt at humour, but how often am I going to get the chance to do that? I am, of course, from Northern Ireland. I have a degree in fine and applied art, and I got my graphic design job as a result of this. The company that hired me actually purchased some of my artwork, and around the same time they were hiring a graphic designer, and they thought they'd try me out. Been there now for coming on to 3 years, and I've learned actually a lot of pretty useful skills that I think will benefit my YouTube account and my videos. Ask any graphic designer what they don't like about their job and they'll probably tell you that it's the long hours. Currently I work 8 to 5 every day, and I don't always get home at 5 or leave work at 5. I quite often have to take stuff home, finish it for clients, and it's part of the reason why I don't get to work on my videos as much as I'd like to. And again, my ultimate goal would be to work part-time as a graphic designer and part-time as someone that creates videos for YouTube, but that remains to be seen. What does JMM Review look like? Well, if you're listening to this podcast on YouTube, you can actually see what I look like. Essentially what this question is asking is, why do I not appear on camera? I think the main reason is equipment. Up until now, all I've ever had is a laptop and a capture card. If I was going to appear on camera, I would want to buy a green screen and some kind of high quality camera. I'd probably want to invest in lighting. If I was going to do it, I would want to do it right. Another reason is that anonymity is quite a nice thing to have. I think I would probably be quite embarrassed if I was sort of in public and someone recognised me. I don't think I would know how to deal with that. Not that I have any kind of social anxiety or anything like that. I just don't know if I like the idea of people I don't know coming up to me in the street, and I don't know, it's not something I would be interested in. To me, I've always tried to make the main focus in my videos about the games and not about me. It's not something I would completely rule out though if my channel gets bigger and I have some spare money to invest in that kind of equipment. At the minute I'm just trying to get everything else nailed down. So that's probably the answer. It's not going to happen anytime soon. Who or what inspired you to make YouTube videos? There's no question about it. The angry Nintendo nerd or angry video game nerd was a huge influence on me, and to some extent he's a huge influence on anyone that makes gaming videos, because he set a standard very early on in YouTube on what to do in making these kind of videos. That being said though, the recent videos he makes I'm not really too interested in. I haven't seen the feature film he made. He's been pretty absent from his channel in the last sort of year or more, actually, probably ever since he started making his feature film. I was quite young when the NES and the Super NES was out, so I was more of a Nintendo 64 era, and he didn't cover very many Nintendo 64 games, and I remember consciously thinking to myself, he's not going to make the kind of videos I want, so I'm going to have to make them. The next influence was a guy called Zozax. I've watched every AVGN video I could possibly watch, and I was searching on YouTube for another reviewer, and I came across something called Pro Review, and I soon realised that it was actually a parody of a reviewer. So this guy was making videos trying to be like some redneck hick, but the thing for me that stood out with his videos was the analogies he made were just some of the funniest analogies I've ever heard. So anyway, I went out and bought a really cheap, nasty mic for I think like £1 or something. It was the worst mic, and it crackled and the quality was disgraceful. I had a capture card I had been using to record game footage for Battlefield clan matches and other types of things like that. Made a parody video of Zozax. But the first proper JMM review video where I just used my own voice and everything was Perfect Dark, and again I was using the same terrible mic. And that Perfect Dark video was a result of posting on the Perfect Dark forums for so long and taking in everything and just putting it all into one video and uploading it really for the forum more than anything else, just to a video to show the people on the forum, the friends I'd made. And it had somewhat success, but again the quality was really bad on it. I remember one day I typed into YouTube top 10 zombie games on the Xbox 360 and nothing came up. There were no results. Well, no relevant results. And again, this was another time where I thought, well, if no one else is going to do it, then I might as well do it. And I had quite a lot of success from that video when I finally finished it. But around this time I started talking to the next person that influenced me, and his name is Hot Lesbian Assassin. I love his videos and I love his approach. I sent him a message on YouTube and he was kind enough to reply with quite a number of tips, and I think I still have that message actually somewhere. I always appreciated him taking the time to give me some tips quite early on, and I think they probably helped. I think one of the tips was actually to buy a decent mic, and it was definitely very good advice. Through Hot Lesbian Assassin I met his friend and started watching videos from Antisocial Fat Man, who sadly passed away a few years ago, and that was definitely a negative influence on me uploading videos to YouTube. He was a big influence on my incubation playthrough. He did a System Shock playthrough and I found it really interesting to watch, and he was the reason why I started up my incubation playthrough. Okay, next question. Would you ever consider doing more full game playthroughs? The short answer is yes. Longer answer is that I actually have had one planned for since before I more or less dropped off the YouTube scene. I've planned a co-op playthrough of System Shock 2, which is a game I've never really played that much. I've been talking to a friend I met through my incubation playthrough, and he said that System Shock 2 would be a good co-op game to play with each other. And well, I've had a lot of complications with my laptop that has prevented it for a long time, but we're in the process of trying to get that underway. I've actually been asked by a lot of people if I would do different playthroughs. Today I was actually just thinking about a Dark Souls playthrough, which would be quite an interesting game to do. I think ultimately it comes down to how much free time I have, and choosing a game to play is sometimes really difficult to decide on. At this stage I'm certainly open to suggestions, and maybe I'll devise some sort of poll to see what games people think I should play. I think a lot of times the problem for me is just deciding which games to focus all my attention on, because once I choose a game I spend quite a long time actually playing it, recording the footage, editing it, all the rest of it. And there's nothing worse than getting halfway through something and having to abandon it, which I've done quite a lot. I'll start playing a game and record a bunch of footage and realise that it's not interesting enough to continue. But from a creative point of view, I really would love to start making more. It's a lot quicker to just play something live and narrate it live and just upload that video. There's a lot less editing goes into it. And if I had 5 to 10 people that were just constantly saying, you really must do a playthrough of a certain game, I probably would do it. So yes, expect to see more playthroughs. I just don't know what they'll be yet. Next question. What was your favourite game in the Metal Gear Solid series, and was it because of the gameplay or story, or why? Well, this is an interesting answer because I'm definitely going against the general consensus here. Or maybe I'm not, but I think when you ask this question to most people, they'll either say Metal Gear Solid 3 or Metal Gear Solid 1. For me, Metal Gear Solid 2 was actually the best game. And I think most people, when I ask them, they say that that's the worst game. And this isn't because I didn't play Metal Gear Solid 1 or anything like that. I mean, a lot of times when I talk to people about their favourite Resident Evil game and they tell me that their favourite was Resident Evil 4, when I push them on it a little bit, I'll usually find out that Resident Evil 4 was the first Resident Evil game they played. But I was a huge Metal Gear Solid 1 fan, and I loved the remake on the GameCube. I think the biggest problem people have with Metal Gear Solid 2 is that they just can't see past the fact that you don't play the majority of the game as Snake Plissken. People have a huge dislike for Raiden, and I think they not quite wrote the game off because of that, but it was probably something that was constantly niggling them while they were playing Metal Gear Solid 2. Another reason this is a strange answer is because Metal Gear Solid 1 was quite possibly one of the very few perfect games. And how do you improve on perfection? I'm probably going to end up talking a lot about this in the my Metal Gear Solid 2 video as well, so I'll save most of it for that. But we have a really rare glimpse here. It's hard to compare a game to a much older game, or even the fact that Metal Gear Solid 1 was released on a different console. Very difficult to compare a game that was released on an older console to one that was released on a newer console. But with Metal Gear Solid, we have a unique precedent here, because Metal Gear Solid 1 was released on a newer console, or at least a console at the same time as Metal Gear Solid 2 was. In fact, Metal Gear Solid, the remake on the GameCube, was released a year after Metal Gear Solid 2. Yet I would still say that Metal Gear Solid 2 was the better game. I'm probably not going to do my answer any justice by thinking out loud about it, so I'll probably have to just save a lot of that for the videos that I hope to make very soon on it. I'm going to do an entire series review. I'm going to do Metal Gear Solid 1 on the PlayStation 1, make sure it's all PlayStation 1 footage and only talking about that. Metal Gear Solid 2, then I'll make a new video on the remake of Metal Gear Solid 1. Originally I was going to just make Metal Gear Solid 1 and the remake all in one video, a bit like the way I did with Resident Evil 1 and the Resident Evil 1 remake. But I've decided to treat them all as separate entities because they're all different and they all deserve their own video. I'll end with Metal Gear Solid 3, and hopefully I'll get that all done before the new Metal Gear comes out. Okay, next question. What are your favourite game series of all time? I'm probably not going to spend a lot of time in this question, but I'll just rattle off my, say, top 5, not in any particular order, or certainly the first 5 that come into my head. Well, Metal Gear we just talked about. The Time Splitters games, I only really get into them from 2 onwards, 2 and 3 really, and I always wish they would sort of continue that series. Of course, the Resident Evil series, the Legend of Zelda series. I don't think I've played a bad Legend of Zelda game, and it's probably the reason I'll continue to buy Nintendo consoles, even though they gather dust for the rest of the time. And 2 other game series I like are the Hitman series, a lot of the Hitman games. The recent one I'm not really as big a fan of. I'd be quite interested to see what the new Hitman's going to be like. And I actually really like some of the Splinter Cell games. I think that's all I can think of off the top of my head for a game series. I've had 2 people ask me what my favourite game was and what my favourite console of all time was. I think I'm just going to combine it all into one answer. The games I like the most, or the games I would class as my favourite, are always the ones from my childhood, or certainly growing up in my teens. I think I just fail to look at these games objectively now, even when I go back and play them. A lot of times people will say, thanks for the honest review, or although my reviews will always be honest, they are more often than not heavily biased, particularly when I'm talking about older games. I think I just fail to look at these games objectively now because I have so many memories of them, and they've become a part of my life really. When I was growing up, I would have a group of friends in a small housing estate. Two or more of those friends would have the PlayStation 1, and there was a few of us had the Nintendo 64, so there was always rows over what was the best. But we'd always end up going to one or the other's house, and if we were playing GoldenEye, we'd sometimes come to my house. If we were playing Metal Gear Solid, I would go to one friend's house, and although Metal Gear Solid 1 was a single player game, everyone would be in the room. There would maybe be 5 to 6 people in one room huddled around the TV screen, and it would be so fun. Everyone would be shouting out what to do next, where to go next. So although it was a single player game, it was actually really fun to play it as a team game. No matter how much I would say that Nintendo 64 was the best, I was always jealous of Metal Gear Solid 1. I actually had Resident Evil 2 on a disc for the PlayStation 1, but I didn't have a PlayStation 1, so I would take that to my friend's house and we would complete the entire game. Later on I would then buy it for the PC, and the memories of those games I'll just never forget. So I'm going to list a few games, and they're my favourite because of the memories I have of them and playing them when I was growing up. And that's GoldenEye, Perfect Dark, Resident Evil 2, Metal Gear Solid 1, Legend of Zelda, Link to the Past, Zelda Ocarina of Time, and Zelda Majora's Mask. A little later, when I got a little bit older, the Time Splitters 2 was, Time Splitters 2 and I think 3, but we probably multiplayer to Time Splitters 2 a lot more. So they're the games that, I can't really pick just one, but they're probably my favourite games growing up with. And because I had a Nintendo 64, I'm probably going to say Nintendo 64. So they're the obvious choices for me. What made you decide to create the GoldenEdge Gaming website in the first place? Very easy to answer this one. I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but I was pretty active on the Xbox forums, as well as quite a lot of people on from GoldenEdge that you might recognise: Blade Runner, Greenfire, MMCC, Crankace, Silent Sputnik, Sean Sim. There's a few others that I can't really think of, but we all were quite active in that forum. Microsoft have ruined those forums. Just everything about them now are really, they're not really interactive at all, and no one really uses them anymore. Apart from that, the game actually itself, the board died. There's only so much you can talk about one game. After a while, posts became more and more off topic, and the forum moderators started deleting posts, and I mean, I can understand why people just really got bored with it, but I met a lot of good friends there, and I wanted to keep that going. There are countless forums out there, and some of them I've had good experiences with, some of them I've had bad experiences with. So the only way I figured that we can sort of make somewhere that our own place and have control over it is by creating our own website. And I suppose another thing I could say is that I've always thought that the YouTube messaging system is really a pain to use, and I just wanted somewhere that if people wanted to talk to me, they could. And so that's really the answer. I wanted to sort of more or less emulate what the community was like on the Xbox forums, have a friendly, and some of the Perfect Dark players have came over, which I'm really happy about. And I've had a lot of help. Blade Runner has done a lot of the website maintenance, and it's worked out quite well so far. So finally, I'm going to end on a joke question. At least I think it's a joke. But it's nice to have a curveball thrown my way. What is the meaning of life? It may sound like a bit of a strange question to ask, but actually I relish the chance to talk about philosophical questions now and then. I was actually really hoping that someone would ask some sort of challenging questions like, do I agree with abortion, or is gay marriage right or wrong? That sort of question I don't find I get to talk about enough with people. I find it really interesting to talk about subjects of that nature instead of, did anyone watch X program last night, or lovely weather we're having type questions. I think it would be interesting in future if we could bring on some people to the podcast that actually have degrees or some sort of authority to talk about these kind of questions. And because, like I said, I'm just generally interested in them. I certainly don't feel like I'm qualified to answer this question, but I do have a few things to say about it. To me, it seems that the answer could be so obvious, and that I think most people just overlook it, or certainly overthink the question. But I think I'd have to rephrase it to, what is the most important thing in life? And the answer must be, from a moral standpoint, the promotion of human well-being and happiness. I think if there's one goal that we can have, I think that's what it should be. Another thing I have to say about it is that there might not be a meaning to life, and what I mean by that is that it might not be an interesting question. It might be a bit like saying, what is the meaning of a mountain? A mountain might not have a meaning. It has a cause, there's a reason for it to be there, but it doesn't mean that it has a meaning. So perhaps there is no answer to this question, but if we're going to create one ourselves, then why not make it the promotion of well-being in humans and animals? Okay, so I think I have answered most of the questions I received. I hope you got the answers you wanted. Hopefully my next podcast I'll have a guest on, which I hope to record pretty soon. So for now, thanks for listening, and hopefully I'll have some more episodes up soon.